Thank you so much for joining us for the Kingdompreneur call on this Super Sunday. You are in for a treat as always, and I'm excited to introduce my amazing husband, Dr. Stan, a.k.a. Dr. Breakthrough. He's an entrepreneur, author, life coach, martial artist, evangelist, and so much more. If you want to know more about Dr. Harris, please Google him or go to his website, www.drbreakthrough.com. All right, Dr. Harris, take it away.
Hey, it's a privilege and a pleasure, a treat and a treasure, a joy beyond measure to be on this call. And we just had an incredible meeting here in Dallas, Texas, Irving, Texas. And, again, Nadia, thank you so much for all that you bring to the table. We made a covenant years ago when we got married, and we tell people we're a covenant couple building covenant relationships based on the covenant of promise, and we aspire to inspire breakthroughs even after we've expired. So we've got a special call tonight, our Kingdompreneur Bible Success Call. We've been doing this for a little over 2 years now, teaching biblical principles as it relates to success. Now, in the world of entrepreneur, get this now, entrepreneur is you doing something to build a business. Kingdompreneur means you're opening yourself up. You're surrendering and allowing God's power to flow through you and for God to build a business through you. And the powerful guest we have tonight, Maurice Katz, as a matter of fact, him and his business partner, Sal, these guys, I call them the dynamic duo. I mean, just incredible young gentlemen that are building a business the Bible way. So I'm going to introduce Sal first. Sal was a youth pastor for about 9 years in California, and Sal and Maurice both have a desire to build their businesses to get to a place where they can just financially be free and do ministry without being a burden on any church. That's incredible. That fits into my model of mentoring men to make millions for the ministry, and those who have low faith, mentoring men to make money for the ministry. So I'm going to introduce Sal, and then, of course, Sal's going to introduce his mentor and his partner, Maurice. You guys are in for a treat. So you got time right now. Text somebody, do a Facebook post, get people on this call. If you know somebody struggling in their business, you got to get them on this call. They're going to be blessed. By the way, if you're part of OneCoin, you better get some prospects on this line quick because it'll also tie that in as well. So it's going to be incredible. So Sal Leto from California, by the way, grew up in Compton. Oh, my goodness, this rough situation, but he got saved by the grace of God. And telling you, my friend, he's allowing God to work through him as he does business the Bible way. So Sal Leto, take it away and introduce your business partner, the other dynamic duo, Maurice Katz. This is Sal.
All right, Dr. Breakthrough, thank you so much for the introduction. It's a privilege to be a part of this call tonight and to share with everyone here to be able to testify and share with others what God has done in our lives. I've been in business for over 8 years. I've been working for myself full-time, working from home or basically working from the internet and a laptop for 5 years. And I've had my ups, I've had my downs, and the last couple years before 2015 were really a struggle. And the frustrating part of it was my production in business was through the roof. I've acquired a skill set where I could bring thousands of people to a company. I could help a company acquire thousands and even tens of thousands of customers. I could help a company increase in revenue by millions of dollars. And you'd think that if you could do all those things for a company, that you'd get paid very well. And the last couple of years, I worked with several different companies, some that were domestic in the United States, some that were international, and I did my part. I did what I was asked to do. I brought thousands of customers. My last company, I brought 16,000 customers with my business partner, Maurice, and millions of dollars in revenue, and then didn't get paid for it. And that's tough because I have a wife, I have 2 children at home, and when I work very hard. And obviously when you're working hard, you sacrifice a lot of your personal time away from your family to be able to provide for the home. And obviously, my wife is looking for the fruit from all of that labor. And I believe if you're in God's will, God will provide the fruit for your labor. And that wasn't happening. So after 7 months of not getting paid, after bringing thousands of customers, millions of dollars in revenue to a company that I was contracted with, I just surrendered, put it that way. I really surrendered. It humbled me And I looked back to God and said, God, what's going on? This cannot be your will for my life. It cannot be your will for me to spend all this time away from my family and to labor and toil and work with my blood, sweat, and tears by the sweat of my brow and then come home completely empty-handed after producing major numbers to still not get paid for it time and time again. And what I did is I detached myself from results. I detached myself from how much money I wanted to make and detached myself from the production I wanted to see from my efforts, and I surrendered all of my business to God. And I said, God, I don't care anymore how much money I make or what the production is or what's going on. I just want to be in your will. Because obviously I'm not in your perfect will, or else I wouldn't be in this situation, and that's a lot more important. And I said a prayer in faith. I said, God, close the doors that you do not want me to walk through and open the doors that you do want me to walk through. And when I see an open door in front of me, I'm going to declare that this is a door opened by the Lord. And I'm going to walk through that door in faith, and I'm going to put my entire business in your hands, and I'm going to depend on you every single day. I'm going to depend on your daily provision. I'm not going to ask you about next week. I'm not going to ask you about next year or 10 years from now. I'm going to ask you about today. I'm going to pray for today's provision, and I'm going to be trained to depend on you daily, just like the Israelites were trained in the desert to depend on God's provision through manna every day in the desert. And that's what I felt like God wanted me to learn, is to depend on his daily provision. So when I gave up on worrying about results and income and production, and I just live a detached life, and I just said, as long as I'm in God's will, that's all that matters. An amazing door opened up for my business partner and I. And we decided that we were going to build business on the grace of God, because previously this was the problem. This is why I was in the situation I was in by working so hard and not getting paid for it. It's because I was depending on my own strengths. I was depending on my own abilities, my own skill sets to build business, right? Because I can communicate effectively, I should be paid well. Because I can bring thousands of customers to a company, I should be paid well. Because I can produce millions of dollars in production, I should be paid well. No. You should be blessed because of God's grace, not because of your abilities. So I wasn't depending on God's grace. I wasn't making him the center and source for all of my provision, and that's the position God wants. Even in your business, he wants to be the center of your business. He wants to be the source. It's from God. It's for God. It's by God. It's for his glory and by his grace. And when I changed my attitude and I had that revelation and I no longer depended on my own strengths, and I realized that God didn't care about my abilities. He just cared about my availability to be able to depend on him and to see what he can do when he takes the wheel and he leads from the front and all I do is just follow. You know how much stress came off of me, how much pressure was lifted off, that I didn't have to worry about being in control or trying to make something happen and work super hard. I learned to just work and rest. I learned that the fight I'm trying to fight was already fought and I've already won, and what I'm trying to do is already done. So everything's changed in business now. I get to glorify God. We've had tremendous results in our business, multiple six figures in income in just a few short months. Our net worth is growing like crazy. My marriage has been enhanced. My relationship with my children has been enhanced. My personal freedom, my finances, everything has been enhanced. And people say, wow, how did that happen? All I can say, it was God. And I really can say it was God. And that's not a cliche. It's because it was God. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce my business partner, Maurice Katz, incredible man of integrity. I don't partner with very many people, but after years of working in business, I decided to partner with this man because he proved to me that he cared more about me and his relationship with me than his own paycheck. And that spoke very loudly. And when we started this new business project that took off so well, he received the revelation of God after a time of prayer. And that revelation, he told me about it. He said, this is what God's going to do. And that has come to fruition. That has been fulfilled. And we've watched God's hand and his plan unfold right before our very eyes, where there's no denying that God told us something, and then God followed through and delivered on what he told us because we were looking to him to deliver on what he told us. So I'm going to bring on Maurice Katz so he could also share what God has done in our business and how easy business has become and how easy it's been to make a tremendous amount of income because of God's grace. So, Maurice, I'm going to pass the call to you. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about who you are, Sal, and that you're partnered with me and that we've actually partnered in this. I don't partner with just anybody. I know Sal and I, we've known each other for about 2 years, and several times Sal asked, he's like, hey, man, we should partner on a project. And I'm like, no, it's okay, because I value his friendship more than money. And for me, it was not about the money. It was about saying, look, sometimes when you partner with somebody, business can actually ruin a friendship. And so I didn't want our friendship to be ruined over money. But when I saw his integrity, I saw his work ethic, and I saw the kind of man he was, I decided, you know what, this is the gentleman that I'd like to partner with for sure. And this is the first time I ever partnered with anybody in this industry of being able to work from home. And I'm glad I did because it's been a blessing for both of us. But let me share this with you. When I was 19 years old, I knew for a fact that I was no longer going to work for anybody else ever. That was it. Right out of high school, I said, I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to be my own boss. There's a lot of people that own their own business. So what did they do that I can't do? And so I realized at that point I'm never going to have a job ever again, and I haven't. I'm currently 34 years old. Now, during that time of being in business for myself, I've had a traditional business. I took that company public. I've also had businesses that I've worked from home. You're literally using the laptop and being able to travel anywhere in the world. But during that time and that seasons in my life, I've had ups and I've had downs. I've been on the mountaintops and just enjoyed life, money just coming in without any effort. And then I've been in the valley where I've been through struggle. And I don't know where you are tonight. I don't know if you're on a mountaintop experience or you're in a valley, but be grateful that God has you where you're at, because he's got a promotion set before you as long as you rely on him. And like Sal said, not your own experience, not your own strength. And so this is what I've learned. And this, at the end of the day, God always looks at your heart and your motivation. And so when I was 19 years old, why did I want to be in business for myself? Was it so I could have the huge yacht? Why? Was it because I could have a multi-million-dollar home? That was not my motivation. My motivation was I know that there's a lot of people that need to be impacted, and I wanted to be able to serve God without any hindrances. And I know that money can become a big hindrance if you don't have any, and you start relying on other people for money. And I didn't want to rely on anybody. I didn't want to rely on churches. I didn't want to rely on offerings. I wanted to rely on God. And so I decided at that point when I was 19 years old that I was going to be able to make the kind of money that people only dream of and live a life of freedom so I could be in full-time ministry. And I've been on several missions trips, but this is where I got it wrong up until the end of 2014. Up until the end of 2014, what I did was I said, you know what, Lord, you know that I'm working very hard to go ahead and be able to serve you full-time, not just part-time, but in every area of my life, and literally minister to people on a day-to-day basis. And so at this point, just let me do this business, let me build up the income, the net worth, so that eventually I could do it. And you know what happened? It just never came. Years went by, a decade went by, and no matter what, I've had a lot, but I've also lost a lot. And I realized at that point that it just wasn't working. And like Sal said, there came a point in my life, literally at the end of 2014, where a company owed me $390,000. And I focused and worked with that company for literally 5 months of my life. And I was at the point where I said, you know what, I'm just not going to do this anymore. There's no reason to. And at that time, when you're in a valley and you're in a place where you've worked really hard, Sal and myself worked really hard, and you're at a place where you're questioning God's will for your life. You're saying to yourself, what's next? What am I going to do? And I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to quit. I just wanted to give up on everything that had to do with home-based business industry. And I said, you know what, I could do anything to make money. But I turned to the Lord and I said, I was open, and this is the revelation that I received. Understanding and being able to work from God's grace through rest versus through turmoil. See, a lot of times we try to put our best foot forward, and we try to work from our skill sets, our determination, our work ethic, which is all important. But you have to still work from a place and a mindset of rest. You see, the Lord says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. If you're the one carrying the burden and you're the one carrying the yoke, truly your dependence is not on the Lord, but it's on yourself. And God has given you strengths. He has given you skill sets. You have, put in your dues to learn what you've learned. And God will use that, but he's going to use it through rest and not through you struggling to do it. So this is what happened. What ended up happening is when I understand and got God's understanding and revelation of his grace and his love for me, which is a lot more powerful than understanding your love for him. And this is why. When we talk to humans back and forth and you say it's always better to give than receive, that is true. It is always better to give than receive. But when it comes to the Lord, it's always better to receive from him than to give to him, because he has so much more to give than we could ever possibly give to him. But a lot of times people would rather try to give to God because it's out of a place of pride. What do I mean by that? Well, we usually, when we're giving to God, we want to make him proud. We've been taught by, being raised with parents that you always want to get the good grades, right? You always want to make sure in sports that when your parents are sitting there in the stands and they're looking at you, you want to make sure you make your parents proud. And so what you always do is you always put your best foot forward. You always give your best in order to benefit that person and get gratitude from them, because it feels good to be recognized. Well, what the Lord has shown me is it's better to put your worst foot forward when it comes to him and show him your weakness and show him your brokenness, because he'll take that brokenness. He'll take your weakness. He says, your strength is made perfect. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. So instead of you coming to the Lord in your strength and trying to show him what he's done in your life and who you are, he knows who you are. It's your weakness that you need strengthening in. And so that's what happened to me in 2015. I said, you know what, I'm going to stop putting my best foot forward and showing God my strength, because he already knows what the gifts and talents he's given me. I'm going to expose my weakness, and I'm just going to come humbly before him and say, look, I know what you've given me, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use you. I'm going to rely on you. And whatever you want to do through me, through your spirit, that I'm going to let it be. And so what ended up happening is Sal and myself at that point started masterminding together. This understanding and this revelation of God's love and grace for us revolutionized the way we think, the way we act, the way we do business, the way we live. And because of that, what God revealed to me, he says, look, you don't have to wait till you're making millions of dollars to be in full-time ministry. Your ministry is day to day. When you're led by the Spirit, you could be on a conference call, you could be talking to a business professional, and in the moment, all of a sudden, the conversation turns and God quickens you, and right there you can minister to an individual. Since 2015, the first quarter of 2015, I spoke more about the Lord during business than I've ever done in the last decade in business before. God was filling my cup. He was filling my spirit with so much information of his goodness and his love that it was just overflowing, and it was just overflowing. And my cup was overflowing, and I just continued to go to the well and get filled, and then every day it was just spilling over everywhere. And what happened is, because I was walking in God's grace and his will, and Sal and myself, our businesses has exploded. So let me share with you basically how our business has exploded. What started happening is we ended up going over to Thailand. We didn't even go there for this particular business that I'm going to share with you, but this is what ended up happening. A company sought Sal and myself out and said, look, we want to pay for you to go to Thailand. We want to pay for your flights, your hotel, and everything. So we looked at it as like, okay, we're going to look at a business, but at the same time, we're going to kind of treat it like a vacation. Well, after 2 days of being there, I was disgusted with the company that they were showing me. I was not impressed with all the fluff, the hype, the big buildings. They didn't impress me whatsoever. I was grateful that they paid for my flight and everything. But I was just like, all right, well, we wasted our time, except for the fact that we kind of saw a new region, a new place in the world that we never saw before. It was then that all of a sudden somebody reached out to us and said, listen, are you still in Thailand? And he said, yes, we are. They said, there's a woman that is supposed to be flying from Hong Kong directly back to Europe, but she's making a pit stop in Thailand. It happens to be the owner of this company called OneCoin, and her name is Dr. Ruja Ignatova. Now, this woman is a prestigious woman. She's full of integrity. She literally is one businesswoman of the year. She's a business celebrity in her hometown. She has a PhD in law. Her and her husband own one of the largest law firms in Europe. She also has a master's degree in finance and economics, and she's written books about cryptocurrency and consulted companies, and she has banking relationships. She is a business celebrity, and Maurice, it would be very hard to meet her any other time, so I recommend you make time to meet with this woman. So I went ahead and I looked online to see where her hotel was, and it was literally 10 minutes from the hotel that I was staying at. So at that point, we jumped in the cab, my business partner and I, Sal, and we drove over to this hotel and spent a good hour with her, questioning her, asking her her vision for the company, who she is, asking her all the tough questions, and she never once deviated from any question. She was honest up front. Her integrity, the person that she brought there, which was the number one guy in the entire the world, he went ahead and came out of retirement completely wealthy, doesn't even have to do this, and he said, look, this will be my biggest income that I've ever made, ever, and I'm going to leave a legacy for my family. And she said the same thing. This is to create a legacy for her family. And so she's put herself out there, and she's created something so phenomenal that I was blown away with it. And at that point, I knew that was a divine appointment. I even came back to the U.S., and I said to one of my friends that believes in the Lord, I said, do you believe in divine appointments? And this is at the time I didn't know if he believed in the Lord. And he says, absolutely. I said, look, this was a divine appointment. I was not supposed to meet necessarily Dr. Ruja because I wasn't even going to go to Thailand. That was her first time in Thailand, and we just so happened to be at the right place at the right time. And at that point, my life and Sal's life took a radical turn. And at that point, what started happening is the gentleman, Bob, he's the one that called us because he wanted to know what Sal and I were doing. We shared it with him, and he wanted to get involved with what we were doing. What started happening, people started calling Sal, started randomly calling me and saying, what are you guys up to? And so we said, this is what we're doing, and they wanted to get involved. What started happening, after 2 or 3 people did that, the Lord shared this with me, and he spoke to me, and he said, listen, just like the animals were drawn to the ark, just like the animals during the times of Noah were drawn to the ark, Noah didn't have to go looking for the animals. They were literally drawn by the Spirit of the Lord. People are going to be drawn to you and Sal, and you're not going to have to go after anybody. And you know what's happened? Since that revelation came and God shared that with me, and I shared it with Sal, and it's happened exactly the way I just shared it. Literally, the biggest people, the most influential people we've ever met, that we've ever been in contact with, are part of our business, and they've contacted us to want to work with us without us even having to go out and labor for it, without us having to do anything. And you know what? What God has actually done is he's glorified himself through us and through our business so that at the end of the day, there's no way possible that Sal or myself can ever take credit for any of this based on our skills, our abilities, because God drew the people unto us. And because we were working from a place of rest and a place of dependence instead of independence, and a place of understanding God's grace and his will and his desire for our life, because our heart is bent towards him and his will, let me tell you, breakthrough has happened in the lives of people. And it's not just myself, it's not just Sal. This is happening across the United States of America. So many people feel drawn to what we're doing here. So many people give testimonials of what God has done through this company. So many people. There was literally a woman that was struggling. The most she's ever made working from home before is literally a couple $100 a month. That is it. She's busy struggling financially. She's working a job. She's got, I think, like 7 or 9 kids, right? Her and her husband are barely making ends meet. And all of a sudden, she's praying to the Lord about something to come along her way that could change her life. She was about to get a second job until someone called her and said, listen, you've got to take a serious look at this. She took a serious look. 3 weeks later, she was able to make enough money to quit her job when she was about to do 2 jobs. 90 days later, this woman is averaging $2,000 a week. In her last 2 weeks, she made $4,000 in a week. So literally in the last 2 weeks, she's made $8,000 when she's never made more than a couple $100 a month. Let me tell you, this is a revolution of what's happening, and it's drawing people into this business. The Lord is bringing them, and it's nothing that we're doing. It's not now. Sure, we're sharing, we're working, we're traveling, we're doing the work and the labor. But you know what? We're laboring through grace. We're laboring through peace. We're laboring through rest because our dependence is on the Lord. And because of that, so many people's lives have been impacted and changed, and so many people are giving testimonials of what's happening. There's a gentleman, and I'm going to leave you with this last story, and then you're going to have to find out what we're talking about and get the details. But let me tell you this. There's a gentleman. His name is Bob. He has 11 children. 6 months ago, this gentleman literally for the first time was on welfare. His wife had to go back to work. He could barely support his family. His wife didn't go back to work for 20 years because, they were making enough money. She went back to work. They still didn't make enough money. They literally were about to get evicted from their home. This company found them, or literally Bob called us. He saw what we were going to do, and he said, whatever you guys are doing, you're men of integrity. You do what you say you're going to do. You're transparent. You're authentic. You're not hypey. You're not fluff. We want to go ahead, and I'm willing to work with you guys. So we did our due diligence. We brought this company back to the United States, and Bob's life has radically changed. He's gone from welfare to making over 6 figures in 5.5 months, and now he bought a piece of property outside of the country. That's what this has happened. Now, we're not talking about years. We're talking about months that lives are being changed. So with that being said, it's an honor, and I'm so grateful that I had a chance to be able to share this testimonial of what God's doing in business, men and women that believe in the Lord and that put the kingdom of God first and his righteousness, and therefore all these things will be added unto us. And that's the kind of life that we're living. It's an honor to be able to serve the Lord, and I'm so grateful that God is actually using me in the way that he's using me and giving me the new revelation of working from a place of rest instead of a place of worry. With that being said, God bless you. Thank you for being on the call, and I'm going to pass it back over to Dr. Breakthrough.
All righty. Man, that's powerful. Folks, that makes me think about in the Garden of Eden. Before man sinned, Adam could just do a little bit of work and got great abundance. After he sinned, the curse. So you got to understand, work is not a curse. The curse was that he would have to sweat, work extra hard, and just bring forth just to live. What Sal and Maurice are talking about is the curse was broken at Calvary. Galatians 3:13, Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law being made a curse for us. So now what they're doing, they're allowing God to do just the opposite now. And instead of them having to work a whole lot and get just a little bit, they're learning to work in the yoke with God, which produces quite a bit. Isn't that what you've been looking for? Aren't you sick and tired of being sick, broken, tired? Aren't you tired of working all day and working all night and never having enough time and just toiling? Well, listen, one of the things you have to, as Nadia and I wrote our book, Position to Prosper, we said positioning is everything. Timing, however, is everything else. The time is right, the position is right. We would like to partner with you. If you like to, they actually hired me to speak for their company, and now I started building it. As a matter of fact, my son, my oldest son, Joshua, he joined. My middle son, Josiah, the younger one, Justin. It's just incredible. My older brother called today. He got started. I believe God is drawing people, as I prayed early this morning, 4:30 this morning, that God would bring people from the east to west to north and the south. People, number one, have been touched by him. Number two, who are willing to be tied together. So number three, we can transform the lives of others. Wouldn't you like to yoke up with us and work with us? If so, whoever invited you on this call, whoever gave you this information, get back to them and see if they're one of those kingdompreneurs, those kingdom Bible success people that are resting in God's success and allowing him to work through them. Now, if you were invited by me, contact me, inbox me, or email me, or you can give me a call, and we'll get you started. We'll work with you. But we would love to be able to do that. So listen, right now you're in the midst of the struggle of your life. Did you hear what Marie said? They were ready to give up. Country there now, maybe. Guess what? What seems to be the end with man can prove to be a new beginning with God. So, what I want you to do is I want you to take a breath. I want you to pray and thank God for allowing you to get on this call, or if you hear the replay, that someone cared enough to give you this pertinent, powerful information. Now, you need to do something about it. So, Father, right now in Jesus' name, I claim the blood of Christ over everyone on this call. I claim the blood over everyone who will hear the recording. Lord, there's some people that are struggling right now. God, they're hurting. And, Father, they've been looking for an answer. Lord, I thank you that the answer was given today. I pray they'll receive it. This word will fall into good ground, not just bring forth 30-fold, not just 60-fold, but 100-fold. I thank you now that people will learn how to rest and work with you and your yoke, where you do the most of the work. We just work with you. We Lord, allowed you to be the pilot. We're just a co-pilot. I thank you and claim the blood and claim your promise, Psalm 115:14. The Lord shall increase you more and more, you and your children, for you're blessed of the Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.